Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome. My name is Rachel Spence, and I'm the Public Programs Manager here at Mohi. Thank you for being here tonight for our panel discussion, Traditional Medicine, BIPOC-Led Health Justice. This panel is in conjunction with our special exhibit, Roots of Wisdom, Native Knowledge, Shared Science, produced and toured by the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. In this exhibit, stories from 4 indigenous communities are brought to life in real-world examples of how traditional knowledge and cutting-edge science can be blended together to provide contemporary solutions to contemporary concerns, and it will be open until March 3rd. As an important orientation to our space, we welcome you to take care of your needs. Bathrooms are past this tower, down the hallway, and on the left. And then we have tables in the back that have herbal tea, courtesy of our speaker, Dr. Tamsin Lee, and plant medicine, courtesy of our speaker, Channa Smith, and the Canoe Journey Herbalists, along with some snacks from Mohi. The Mohi Mercantile is also open, and we encourage you to peruse after the program. As we ground ourselves in space, it's important to begin by acknowledging that here at Mohi, we are on historic and contemporary lands of the Duwamish, Skokomish, Muckleshoot, and all Coast Salish people. Historically, Native communities were forcefully removed from the city, but today we honor their continued endurance with deep respect and gratitude for their unbroken stewardship of this place. Tonight, we will specifically be learning about plant medicine traditions from Coast Salish tribes, as well as healing practices from a variety of indigenous communities. And now, I am honored to leave the stage and introduce our wonderful moderator, Rachel Heaton, who is a member of the Muckleshoot Tribe and descendant of the Duwamish People, a community organizer, mother, nature lover, and an activist. Rachel speaks on the violations of Native and Indigenous people's rights, finds ways to educate and bring awareness to those outside of our community, and creates visibility of Native peoples in outdoor spaces. Heaton is a co-founder of Mazaska Talks, an Indigenous-led organization that brings attention to the destruction of Mother Earth caused by funding and investments in the fossil fuel industry. Rachel is also a member of Moms Clean Air Force, an advisory board member for the Green New Deal in the city of Seattle, an advisory board member for No Child Left Inside, and a board member for the Strategy and Solidarity Board through the Equation Campaign. Please give a big round of applause for Rachel Heaton, who will introduce our panel.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Test. Good evening, everyone. You're all in for a treat tonight. We have an amazing panel here tonight. We have a cultural practitioner, we have clinical herbalist, a researcher, an all health justice advocate, and literally the list goes on with the group that we have up here. First off, I would like to introduce Channa Bliner-Smith. Channa Bliner-Smith is a cultural practitioner, proudly descending from the Skokomish and Yakama Nations. Channa's personal journey of service and budding love affair with plants led her to her current position with Canoe Journey Herbalists as the Apothecary Support Specialist. She witnesses the reconnection and healing that occurs when relationships to our plant relatives are awakening. So what we're going to do is I would like to introduce Channa, and then our first question tonight is, what forms of healing do you practice? So I'm going to let her share that with all of you, and then I'll go ahead and introduce the rest of our panel.
Hi everybody. So that's a really multifaceted answer for me. Because I work with Canoe Journey Herbalists, I have a large variety of options and modalities that are available to me for healing and working with people. Though I find that what I really gravitate towards is more spiritual and energy work, so I never really know what modality that I'm going to be using until I'm in a moment with the person and just feeling them and just reading what their needs are. So it could be anything from the healing of a heartfelt conversation and a place that is, a confided ear to song or other spirit medicines. I work with a little bit with fire cupping, so just a little bit into that, and a lot of like the plant medicines. You just never know. But I guess I'm here also representing our organization. And so we have everything as a whole, from people that are doing midwifery to like death doula work, people that are really, really passionate about first aid. I also am a certified wilderness first responder. It's just something that a few of us with our organization do as part of community accountability. Because sometimes we might be set up at an event and we're trying to give somebody a cup of tea and nurture them with their plant journey, and maybe they needed an EMT, but they're not at that place where they feel safe or comfortable to seek a more formal form of healthcare or assistance. So that's just a little bit, yeah.
Thanks, Channa. And just so everybody knows, we will have a Q&A at the end. So I know that you may have questions, but let's hold off till the end and you will get the chance to answer. So next we have Dr. Tamsin Lee. Dr. Tamsin Lee is a versatile East Asian medicine expert, researcher, and health justice advocate, champion Taoist medicine, recognized by Well Plus Good and the American Public Health Association. They co-host the Beauty as a Birthright podcast, delving into Taoist beauty, wellness, and honoring East Asian medicine for health liberation.
Hi everyone.
Now you get to answer the questions.
What do I do? What healing modalities do I do? So because I am an East Asian medicine practitioner, all things East Asian, which is acupuncture, herbal medicine, body work, moxibustion, cupping, gua sha. But the thing that most people don't know about East Asian medicine is actually it derives from metaphysics and Taoist practices. So a lot of the healing that I do personally is simple, that exists in all traditional cultures, is learning how to be more in sync with nature, be more in the rhythm of natural nature. So as the season changes, making really tiny adjustments to my daily habits and health and wellness practices that is more aligned with the rhythms of nature. And I don't see patients, but I do see clients. And through my work with elemental archetypes, I work with clients in spiritual metaphysical practices, which is primarily Taoist, face reading, and Batsa, which is Chinese astrology. And in that's originally before acupuncture, before herbs. Practitioners would actually work on the spirit level. And so that's what I do with clients now, is work through, mostly for the spiritual level, through different types of metaphysics. For me, it's really simple. It's just making sure that I sleep and I wake up in different times as the season changes, just like the animals, and really learning how to be more in sync with the universe.
Thank you. And for our last panelist, Shelagh Brown. Shelagh is a clinical herbalist, ethnobotanist, medical historian, writer, poet, storyteller, cultural worker, and healing-centered engagement practitioner who infuses traditional ecological wisdom with modern science. Shelagh is the founder of Decolonizing Healthcare, the Psychedelic Wellness Collective for Black and Brown folks, and is the Health and Wellness Director at Creative Justice. So Shelagh, will you share with us what healing practices you do?
Excuse me. I do a lot. I'm also trained in East Asian medicine and acupuncture. I'm also a Western clinical herbalist trained in that. I'm trained in aromatherapy. I literally have dozens of certificates and like 14 years of education. So my practice really encompasses everything from my education as well as like my own culture as a mixed Black person who is a descendant of the transatlantic slave trade. And a lot of the work that I do is like making the connections between like all of our healing practices from the African diaspora and connecting them to the training that I have because there's so many similarities. I do work for a Black youth arts organization, and so like in my daily work, a lot of what we do at Creative Justice is a very holistic way of healing young people. We work with youth who are impacted by the criminal punishment system and the DSHS foster care, so we're really providing a lot of like basic needs for them, literal like housing and connecting them with different resources in the community and helping them navigate the system. My job is to bring different like healing modalities to them to teach them how to do for themselves and also allow them to have those experiences, whether it's with an acupuncturist, a massage therapist, a yoga person, someone who does Qigong. I mean, we bring in as many different people from the community, from Black and Brown communities who are doing healing as possible. And then I don't have a clinical practice right now, but I do pop-up clinics around the city with various organizations such as The Village. I'm also a clinical aromatherapist, so a lot of what I do when I'm practicing clinically is incorporating different elements of plant medicine, energetic medicine, crystals. I use tuning forks. I mean, it's similar to what Channa said. There's no one thing that I'm going, when I go to treat someone, I'm not like, I'm going to do this. They tell me what they need when I'm in the moment, and maybe I end up doing matza on them. Maybe I do tuning forks. Maybe we do some aromatherapy. It really depends on the person. So I just kind of infuse everything together and allow people to tell me what they need.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you all got to meet our panelists. When we were coming together to create what was going to take place this evening, it started off as a conversation about traditional plants and traditional medicines. And I was working with Rachel and Zora, and we were talking about like what would be the best way to convey this message about the importance of traditional healing. And there was not one person that we could just think of. And so we were like, how can we get the best representation? Because we all represent different communities, different BIPOC communities. And so seeing these health practices within our communities is really important when we think about the number of health inequities that we see throughout our communities and the injustices that continue to take place. Particularly our Native communities. I can speak on, and I know Channa can too, diabetes is, one of those issues in our community, which was intentionally placed, by the government through, commodified foods. And the intention was, for us to basically live off sugar and flour and water, which is the recipe for, you'll hear in our community, fry bread. And so, but that has also created these health disparities that you see throughout our communities. And each person up here can speak, to those disparities that they are navigating and working and trying to heal in their communities. And so I would like to start, I'll start with Dr. Tamsin for this question. What does health justice mean to you? And what mindset shift would you like to see around health and wellness?
So as you were sharing, the one thing that came to mind is that the one thing that we don't look at when we think about these practices that are more accessible today is thinking about how did we get access to this medicine? how does the public have access to this medicine? So I can speak in terms of Chinese medicine. The only reason why we have access to acupuncture, herbs, cupping is mainly because Chinese laborers were here building the railroad and they didn't have access to healthcare. And so these people that were coming in to basically be indentured servants is that they didn't have access to healthcare, so they had to use the medicine of their family. And a lot of these traditional practices that we have access to comes from people who are just learning how to survive and how it's grown up to be this really commodified wellness industry, nowadays. And so when I think about health justice, I think about this really unique Korean concept. So my background is I'm a second generation Korean American, and we have this concept called Chong. And there's no real translation for it, but it embodies this feeling of interconnection amongst people, amongst the universe, amongst nature, amongst animals. And it's not only this connection that we have, but it's this love and this genuine compassion and wish of well-being, right? So when I think of health justice, I think of it in that terms. And a lot of my work revolves around decolonization and decolonizing Chinese medicine, East Asian medicine. And as I was starting to speak out about a lot of things related to health justice, I was so filled with so much anger and rage and sadness and grief that it was affecting my health. And so I had to take a moment and go to my elders, and who've been doing this sort of work for far longer than I have. And they were they have so much love and lightness in their eyes. They're not angry, they're not burnt out. And when I was looking at working with people in my age group, like we're all just exhausted and burnt out. And so they reminded me, decolonization is just part of the work. What we're really aiming for is liberation. And if I can keep that in mind when I'm doing health justice work, that's the motivating drive for me, that there is this liberation that we're working towards. And to me, it's all about interconnection. And it's honoring traditional practices, it's keeping the medicine alive, but really uplifting and supporting the people and the culture of the medicine where it comes from, and really amplifying and having them lead, rather than, at least what I can say in East Asian medicine, Asian people are not leading this discussion of how this medicine is supposed to be practiced. And so, I'm at a place in my career where I am really trying to reckon with these complex feelings when I work through decolonization, and really look at it in a much more hopeful way, simply because it was affecting my health. And really looking at it that I need to really focus on liberation, and that's what drives me. The root of it is decolonization, but there's something that we're working towards.
Thank you. Shanna, would you like to answer? Do you want me to tell your question again?
Good.
Okay. What does health justice mean to you, and what mindset shift would you like to see around health and wellness?
Oh, that's 2 questions. Okay. Because they mean something different to me. To me, health justice is really about sovereignty with our personhood, and with the land as well. And so it's this beautiful way that we should have the right to choose our health care. What does health in our bodies look like and feel like for each one of us individually, rather than being told there's this right or wrong way, there's this rigid path that one should follow. And a lot of that really is tied to, I feel like a solid health justice is a healthy land, healthy water, healthy plants. These are our relatives. This is what feeds us, and so it's all encompassing. It's about sovereignty for us as individuals, as the humans, two-leggeds, and then sovereignty for all of our plant relatives and everything else in between that supports life for us. And then the second part is like the mindset shift. For me, I think the most important thing that I like to convey with folks is, there's all these modalities of healing. There's, all these teas and stones and everything, and it's wonderful to have access to these things, but I think in the root of it all is that we're the medicine, and I view, and the way that I was taught by my elders and teachers is that the plants are our helpers. They're not, no amount of tea or therapy is gonna heal you. You have to embrace and understand that, from the moment you were born into that first breath, that you have that medicine, you are that medicine. And so for that mindset shift, it's really about cultivating and thinking about that, okay, if I'm the medicine, am I being intentional with my being? Am I being intentional with my spirit? Am I being intentional with my thoughts and my words and my actions, and so it's really about, how we live and honor ourselves and the medicine within us. And absolutely, it's wonderful to have the plant relatives and all the other, modalities of healing with us.
Thank you. And Shayla, would you like to share with us, what does health justice mean to you, and what mindset shift would you like to see?
What was the second part?
What mindset shift would you like to see around health and wellness?
Okay. Excuse me. So I'm not someone who can talk about just one system. You can't have a perfectly functioning healthcare system when there's all these other systems harming people. I work with young people who are at the crux of most systemic violence of pretty much anyone in our cities and culture. So for me, as long as people don't have a place to live, safe communities where we can walk down the street and not worry, about getting shot by police, where we can have schools that actually support us and educate us in ways that allow us to thrive. I also used to do clinics here in Seattle for many years for our houseless people, and you learn a lot doing that because there's only so much I can do as a clinician when someone has to go back and live outside. There's just nothing that I can really do for them other than give them some peace for 30 minutes or an hour if you're going back to living outside. So for me, healthcare justice is about dismantling all systems of harm and creating a new way of living that is supportive and just and healthy for everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean really, really censoring the people who are at the crux of the most systemic harm within our Black and brown communities as well, because it's you can be Black, but if you're also trans, you're queer, you're houseless, you are all these different things that just make living life impossible some days. For me, there's just never going to be justice in one system without it in all of them. To me, and then can you ask the second part of the question again?
So what is the mindset shift that you would like to see around health and wellness?
Yeah, I would like to see a mindset shift around the fact that the social determinants of health are more important than anything any doctor is ever going to do when you set foot in their clinic or office. When I got to my medical training, they weren't even talking about these things. 10, 15 years ago, I had to educate my supervisors and my teachers around the social determinants of health, which are all these things from environmental pollution to racism to sexism to homophobia, all these different things that we experience in the world that impact our daily lives. I really want to see that shift in medicine to be inclusive of all of these things. And I also want to see a shift around more like culturally appropriate thinking, and also like practitioners, and the recognition that someone doesn't need a clinical education to be a healer, and to have more just access to all the different types of healing that we know that are available and that are from our own cultures that we can utilize. Because like Channa said, that medicine is within us. And I know that for me, it has been more healing to sit with someone who sees and hears me than any plant medicine that I've ever used in my life. So that's the major shift that I would like to see.
Yeah, thank you. Just hearing what all of you are saying, and these inequities that we've, experienced throughout our communities, one common thing is the introduction of disease, and the way it plays out in our communities. And so, I know we'll have a question on what are our hopes for the future, but, the more and more that these diseases are introduced, which have been since colonization started, what could our communities be doing? And I see, about these different healing avenues, like how do we get these healing avenues to those individuals? And I know that's not a question that we had all discussed before, but if you guys don't mind sharing, just like you were saying, you wish that people had access to these healings within your specific community. What does that look like in terms of getting that healing to your community? And do you mind?
Sure. I mean, it looks like just doing it, creating it. That's the only way that we've ever gotten anything in our communities, is for us to create it for ourselves. You can't wait for like government or city or white, well-meaning people to do anything for you. We, as Black and brown people, know how to get a lot done with a little. So for me, I've always just been like, this is missing, I'm gonna do it. So that is how you get it done, Like, I basically created my position at work because that was a missing aspect to the work that was happening. And I was like, the young people are asking for it, and this is what I do, so let's create a whole health and wellness curriculum so they can get general checkups, dental, massages, all these things that like a lot of our young people have never ever had. So yeah, just create it. That's the short answer.
Dr. Tamsin?
That's a great question. I'm thinking about my field, I'm thinking about my people. I think the Asian story, the Asian narrative is so different because we have been grouped as this monolith group. But there's over 100 races and ethnicity and languages and culture that exists under this umbrella that we call Asian. And then we also have the Asian American diaspora experience versus Asians who are born there. And then immigration status that have all influenced our identity of who we are. So when I was speaking out about these issues within my field, the people that I pissed off the most were actually other Asians. And that was something that I had to really work through. And I think for our community, we have to unpack our own internal racism and bias first, and really understand what it means to be Asian, what it means to be Asian American, and find a way to understand that we have been given privileges that have triangulated us against other communities of color, and then we've also committed harm against other communities of color. And I think that's where we have to start first, because the vast difference of socioeconomic status amongst Asian is just so broad, right? So, and that in itself is a privilege. You're finding where you stand financially, your education, your abilities, and that creates so much more privilege, even though we're all grouped under this big broad term Asian. And so for my community, I think we have a lot of unpacking to do with our own narrative and really reclaim what it means to be Asian, because we've just been told what it means to be Asian. We haven't figured it out yet, what this actually means. And so I think from that, and also bridging the gap between younger people and our elders. I feel like in our communities, there are these two separate resources and support for these two big communities, but we don't really come together as one community there's millennials and Gen Zs, and then also being in the same space as our elders. So, and I'm in my 40s, and so this group, like we were talking about before, there isn't a lot of support for us in this weird stage in our life where we're caregivers and we're caretakers, but there's not a lot of care for us. So, I think those are the two places where I would start.
Yeah, it is true. It's a lot about creating it for yourself, and I've done a lot of that work, community service work. I'm a cultural instructor down in Vancouver. I work with art students and served with Native veterans, all sorts of different types of organizations, and it's really hard to find a place where you can really feel that healing, like everybody's coming together in this open-hearted way. I live all the way down in the Portland area, but I work as Apothecary Support Specialist for Canoe Journey Herbalists, and that's in Tacoma, in Puyallup. And I drive all the way up here to do that work because there's something really beautiful that's happening with this collective. And so we are an Indigenous-centered, intergenerational group, and so we have people, however that indigeneity feels right to that person, we're welcoming them, wherever they're at in their position of reconnecting with their own ancestors. And there's also something really beautiful that I'm witnessing and we experience a lot as gatekeeping. You want to learn more, right? We're all hungry for healing. We're all hungry for healthy community, and it's hard to find. A lot of the people that do hold this knowledge will guard it fiercely, and it's understandable why that happens when we talk about these systems of oppression, when we talk about the ways that people have been historically disadvantaged, or like one time it's safe and then now it's not. Now we're gonna jail all you guys. We're gonna put you in internment. We're gonna take away the children. We're gonna put you in prison for practicing your culture. And so there's been so much that's been underground for so long, and so it's really, really fresh in living history right now, where there is this safety to come forward with the knowledge and share it, and it's really about building it. And it is about involving the children. It's about involving the elders and the families, and restoring those units, and then building something that's sort of outside of the systems that we have in place. Like with our collective, everybody is welcome, and we're meeting people where they're at with whatever their ability is. And for some folks, it's just sitting there and sharing their presence. Maybe they have physical limitations or other type of impairments that prevent them from engaging in maybe a more physical way. And for other folks, it's bagging tea, whereas other people might be stewarding a garden or doing the harvesting, or we have people that are traditional healers, and then it's that intertribal piece that feels really good about it. We have folks in the Canoe Journey Herbalists that are from all over the place. We have folks from like Korea, Japan, South America. We have Native American people from all across the continent, and everybody's coming together, and we're all sharing in that conversation. We're all going to have one conversation, and everybody's talking and saying, well, my grandma told me this, and my grandma told me that, and then because everybody experienced our disparity in a different way, it was sort of like the knowledge was kind of partially preserved here and partially preserved there. And so it's really, really beautiful to sit in these spaces and just hear the sharing, while we're like digging in the earth together and, gathering roots, and all of a sudden all these missing pieces are just like, you have all these aha moments, and this togetherness. And so I think that's just where it's at. It's being humble and being honest and just getting it out there. Just share it. And if somebody isn't ready to embrace it, that's their personal journey that they're on, and try not to let that bother you, and just keep, cultivating your own medicine, and you get so much more in tune with what feels right, and then you'll find your community and you can build from there.
Thank you. Listening to all of you talk, we all come from different communities, but we hear so many similarities. You talk about Asian dysphoria and the fact that there are over 100 different nationalities within that. And, Native communities do the same thing. There's over 500 tribes, here in the States, and we're all very different, from the foods we eat, to the plants that we harvest, to the cultural practices and ceremonies that we do. We're all very different, but we all get conglomerated into these little boxes. And Shelagh, just like you were saying, just go and create it. Go create whatever it is that you need. And I find that's what we're doing in all of our communities, is we are all at this creation place of creating healing within our communities. I know for myself, I primarily work outdoors now, but that outdoor work for me in bringing that to my community started, with the fight at Standing Rock. And, a lot of us at that time felt like we had purpose. We were fighting the front lines, we were fighting for drinking water for 18 million people, down the Missouri. We were fighting for Indigenous rights, we were bringing attention to MMIW. But then what we found is that when camp closed down, everybody's addictions and those things that they hadn't healed surfaced. And so they didn't know who to turn to, and those resources weren't there. And so, again, one of those common denominators within our community. And so what I want to ask with that is, what is one action that people can take to move towards their own health and the health of their communities? And Shelagh, would you like to start with that question?
This is the one I didn't think about the most. Like I said, I think that it's within you to figure out what you need for your own healing, for yourself, your family, your community. So, trying to connect with people who are already doing things that you're like, oh wow, that's really, that's dope. I want to be a part of that. I want to learn about that. Seattle has this culture of not reaching out and not talking to each other. We talked about this quite a bit. So I just urge people to reach out. I'm available. You can email me. You can, message me on IG or whatever. I'm always open to, anyone who wants to connect with what I'm doing, learn more. Connect with one another. Find the people who are doing what you want to be doing, who are moving towards the solutions that you want to see who are really doing that like inner work too, because the work of like creating a liberated world, the work of decolonization is very personal. It's very, very like self-work. Of course, it's community work as well. But if you're not like every single day working on like breaking down the conditioning that we all who grew up in the US have and went to these schools that conditioned us to think in these very colonial, white-centered ways, if you're not breaking down that whiteness, that heteronormativity, that able-bodied supremacy, all of these things that, you know, create a lot of like issues of power within communities, within families, within relationships, that's where it starts. Like, where are you within your personal relationships around all of these issues? Start there. Start with yourself. Start with your family. And then reach out to people who you're like, wow, they're dope. I want to be doing that. I want to be a part of whatever they're doing. And you know what? If they're not open, just reach out to someone else. Don't be, don't get discouraged if someone isn't open. I mean, I feel like we're so disconnected from one another that you just have to have that like, okay, I'm not gonna get upset, I'm just gonna keep trying attitude, because that's what I have and that's the only way that I've survived here. I'm like never gonna be completely discouraged because like I know my purpose and I know in my heart like what I'm here to do on this planet and in this world. So if someone's like not feeling me, not feeling what I'm doing, then I'm gonna just move on and find the people who are. I feel very fortunate to have found that like the work that I do every day, and so I've been able to create like my vision and what I want to be doing because of the support of my people, the people that I work with. So just find the people who are about what you're about and want to support what you're doing.
Action you could take. You know, this word keeps coming up, disconnect, right? And we talked a little bit, I mentioned earlier about, right, that medicine of yourself. And, you know, everybody has, you know, experienced some form of colonization. Like even the folks that identify as white or identify as like, I don't have a cultural, yes, they've experienced it a long, long time ago, right? Like the witch trials and, you know, all that stuff, right? Like everybody's going through it. But there's this one common thing that we have is, you know, we are beings of this earth. You know, and so, you know, it's a lot tied into that, like that justice movement is that how do we reconnect with the earth? You know, what can we do to heal? And a lot of it is like, you know, we all talk about colonization, but it's like that industrialization, you know, that's caused all this pollution. So I feel like, you know, everybody can find a way to reconnect with the land somewhere. Maybe you live in the city and you don't have access to gardening. So perhaps you see a beautiful tree that's always getting tangled with blackberries. Take it upon yourself to get some clippers and liberate that tree and just and have like a place where you can start having a relationship with something that's sacred and speaks to you in whispers outside of yourself. You know, it could be just growing tea in a container on your patio, that then you get to drink that tea, you know, drink that plant and have that relationship. So, you know, look for ways that you can do that. You know, volunteering at a community garden is a great way. You know, just find any little way. Taking walks, visiting the water. My daughter and I, actually, one of our favorite activities, and we do this especially if we're feeling stressed or we're like, oh man, that was a tough week. We love to go pet moss. and the mushrooms too, right? And we call it booping the mushrooms, and we go out into the woods and you know, some people go hiking and they're like, it's destination, and we're just like, we'll spend like 2 hours and we'll have gotten 20 feet. You know, we're like, oh my gosh, look at the way the mushroom grows on the back side of this little piece of wood, but on the front side, there's these other kinds, and touch this one, oh, it's this, it's that. You know, so it can look and, you know, feel whatever way speaks to you, but just finding a way to reconnect with the land and with nature is a really great place to take action, and it feels really good.
I love that I can go last because I learned so much from both of you. I think it's similar to what both of you have said. My one thing is to just take care of yourself first. Like, put that mask on first before you start taking care of other people. And we're conditioned to give, and put ourselves last until it's too late. And then it's this awakening moment, right? But you cannot continue to give to your community if you don't give to yourself first. And wellness has been so commodified. It feels like we always need to buy a new thing that is going to keep us healthy. But it really boils down to very simple things, you know? Can I sleep a full night? And can I go outside and get some fresh air? Can I connect with another human being? Those things are, you know, you don't really need much, right? And so try to quiet the buzz of you need this thing, you need that thing, you need this class, you need this group, you need this workshop, and really just simplify it and get that foundation and continuously give to yourself, because compassion fatigue is so real. And in the goodness of our heart to want to help our communities, we jeopardize our own health and well-being. And we really need to take care of ourselves first, myself included. So, yeah.
I'm really glad that you've made that point about taking care of ourselves. I think that's a ongoing thing that all of us here, you know, is how can we take better care of ourselves? And just like Shanna's saying, you know, getting outside and is healing in itself. You know, as a cultural practitioner, I take folks outside, and the goal of that is to connect them to the land. And connecting in a way is mind, body, and spirit. So being in nature and, you know, breathing the fresh air and being around the trees and the plants, that's helping my mind, it's relaxing me. I'm walking through the woods, or I'm, you know, sitting next to this tree, you know, I'm nurturing my body, and I'm connecting spiritually out there when I'm with Creator's creation. And so you're right, it is simple, but it's interesting how complicated it's become. And so one thing that I really enjoy that I get to do is I get to take youth out into the woods, and we are decolonizing the gym setting, you know, and so during COVID, you know, we have all come to this place where we can't go indoors. At that time, we didn't want to share spaces. It felt very unsafe. Well, for a lot of us, the gym was our mental health place, and we didn't have that space to go to. And so we started holding classes outside, and what we realized is that we were just doing movements that our ancestors were doing for survival. And so we were sitting down, and now it's called a squat in the gym, or you bend over and it's called a deadlift, or you put something up on a shelf and it's called an overhead. So we've given all of these crazy names to movements that our ancestors have been doing since time immemorial. And so we came to this conclusion of like, we can heal out here. So now we get the opportunity to use the land to work out. So we're jumping over logs, and we're throwing rocks, and we're doing terrain runs. But while we're doing it, we're eating wild blueberries and huckleberries, and we're looking at, you know, bare grass that we can potentially weave a new basket or a hat in. And so we're connecting culturally, we're connecting, you know, spiritually. And then when you take a plant and you can make it relevant to that youth. So like Shelagh, for example, we always have the conversation about Shelagh, and we see it all over when we are navigating through the mountains or through the parks. And so Shelagh is great for endurance. And so when you can tell a youth that if you drink this as a tea or you use the berries, and it will give you endurance, all of a sudden the light clicks, because then they're like, wow, I can actually use this. But not only that, they're connecting to the land and their culture, and they don't quite realize that's what's happening. So, so with that, those are the kinds of things that give me hope, is when we can go and take everyday learning and then make it relevant in a way to today's generation, that they're going to carry cultural practices and healing practices in ways that work for them. And so, Shanna, I'm gonna start with you. So, in the practices that you're doing and the work that you continue to do, and also I'm someone who am very familiar with Canoe Journey, to participate in it for years, and I know the healing that comes, from being out on the water and, connecting to our living beings, which are canoes, and knowing that we have those practices gives me hope for the future, that we are capable of still doing these things. So for you, in the work that you do, what gives you hope for the future?
Oh, it's happening all the time. It's this, right? It's this conversation, and it's and you can see it, right? And you can feel it. If you really are quiet and sort of intentional with where you steer your eyes, and it's happening all over the place. There's just this beautiful resurgence of healing and health and connection. And it's kind of wild, because it's like simultaneously we're watching this mental health crisis happening in our streets. Like, we're seeing it so much more, than we ever used to, where it's hard to feel safe because, you're witnessing people with this states of psychosis and other, unhealth and wellness. But we're working hard towards healing, and we're raising the children to know that, for a lot of us, we had those interruptions where we weren't always honoring the relationship between the youth and the elder and bridging that gap. And so I'm seeing that a lot more and witnessing that, and I'm seeing my children have access to things that I just didn't really have in my generation, like our elders did, because they were old enough to sort of be born with the knowledge holders and just getting the tail end of the language and the teaching and stuff. And then for some of us in our middle age, 40s, 50s-ish, kind of right now, we sort of miss that. And then our children, though, now there's all these programs, and I'm always asking my kids to teach me stuff. So if you don't have a youth advisor in your life, get one. And if you think you know everything just because you're grown, think again. They are our hope. They're seeing things in such a wild way, and with open eyes, and they have all of this knowledge and things that they can research just at their fingertips, right? In this new generation, where it's sort of scary too. You're thinking of some of the nefarious ways that can go wrong, but we can't hold on to that. I'm not going to be that. That's not my choice. My choice is to focus on what's going right and to hold the energy that feels right and, center in that and reverberate that and grow that. And I think that I'm seeing that more and more and more, and it gives me hope.
Okay.
I feel like I have no choice but to be hopeful. I am realistically optimistic. So I do tend to see the more optimistic side in life. But when I work with clients, what I remind them is, in Taoism, the philosophy is that we were all born here with a destiny. And we've all chosen this moment in time to be born here. And that's what metaphysics teaches us, is what is our destiny? Why did we choose to be born here, to this family, to this city, to this world, at this time and moment? And destiny isn't fate. So just because you have a destined path, it doesn't mean that that's what your path is going to be like. At every opportunity, you have free will to decide on how you're going to live out your life and to live out your purpose. And the one thing that brings a lot of East Asian cultures together is that our culture is Taoist, Buddhist, and Confucianism. And Confucianism is this philosophy that your purpose in life is to be benevolent. It's to be compassionate to other people. And that's your purpose in life, is to learn how to love each other. And so when I think about what gives me hope, I think about my clients and people that I work with, that each one of us have a destined path. And we're given these gifts, these innate gifts, to make this world a little bit better. And that's our purpose. So I think about that in my life, that what is my purpose? Why am I here? And how can I be more of a benevolent person so that in my next life, I can come back a little bit easier and maybe enjoy it a little bit more and in a better world. And then kind of like what you said, Channa, like I have 2 nephews and they're 6 and 3, and I've been learning so much from them. And Chinese medicine is the same. Like they are closer to the spirits than we are. So we can see the spirit in them, and they can teach us so much more.
Thank you. Sheila?
So yeah, I'm very fortunate to be able to spend my days with young people. You know, the one thing, it always frustrates me when people say, oh, this generation is so revolutionary. Every young generation has been revolutionary. As a Gen Xer in the early 90s, I was out protesting at the Nevada test sites at Monsanto, doing a lot of agriculture and environmental activism, you know, doing peace walks. Every young generation has that spirit. The thing that sets this young generation apart to me is they care more about how other people feel. Being a fat, black, poor, disabled kid in the 70s through 90s was horrible. It was encouraged by adults to pick on people like me. And so that was just what all kids did, right? It was the norm, it was accepted, it was expected for you to be liked by the cool people, to be cool to people like me. But I don't see that. I mean, of course, you know, of course all young people have their issues of getting along, but I see a difference in this generation around like them really caring about like other people and like these marginalizations, and instead of wanting to make fun of people, wanting to actually like connect with people and be there for each other and like create ways of including people who are generally excluded. So for me, that is what gives me hope, is that I'm just gonna say that like young people today are better people. I'm not an optimist, I'm a realist and I'm a historian. And my father was, I would be remiss without bringing my father into this conversation. My father was experimented on in a Jim Crow clinic in 1949. They did experimental radiation on his head when my grandmother took him in for ringworm, which caused tumors to grow in his head for 15 years that eventually killed him. I had, like, really just knowing that and learning that 30 years ago and then watching my father slowly die, it's kind of impossible for me to be optimistic and not just be a real realist. But that's why I work with young people. I don't have a lot of hope for adults. I'm also very real. I'm not gonna lie and like sugarcoat things. Adults don't give me much hope, but that's why I work with young people. They're all the hope that I have currently in the world. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, I want to thank the 3 of you for taking time to answer the questions that you did this evening. And so if you guys could give them a round of applause, we're going to continue the questions. But before we move to questions and answers, do the Q&A. Dr. Tamsin Lee is going to do an activity with us, and I'm going to let them explain exactly what we're going to be doing. And so I will turn it over to Dr. Tamsin Lee.
Okay, so I wanted to share a little Qigong practice. It's super simple and something that I do in the morning, in the evening, or in between breaks. Feel free to join me. It's pretty easy, but we can do it standing or sitting. I'll just do sittings as well. So you could just take a moment to kind of just stretch a little bit. I need this. For a little Q&A. Yay, hugs. And the whole idea is just to tap your body. And this is a self-massage, Qigong self-massage. And if you feel called to stand up, feel free to stand up. Just listen to your body, however the way you want to do this. And the main practice is just remember to breathe, continuously breathe, and play around with how the rhythm, the speed that you want to tap your body. And it's just a way to connect with your body in a very simple way and awaken the body. So just shake up a little bit. Don't forget to breathe. Just start tapping whichever side you want to go. Just go down the arms, side, go back up. Go the other way. Cross the arms, cross it up. Straight up the shoulders. Just start tapping. Make sure you tap to the sides with your wrist. Tap my legs. One last time. Down the leg. Just take a moment to tap the lower belly. Just rub your belly a little bit, close your eyes, lower your gaze, soften your gaze, whichever feels comfortable for you. Notice the rhythm of your breath. Sensation in your body, the temperature. Notice any tension in your body, in your face, in your shoulders, your hips. Feel free to move it around if you like, if it feels comfortable. Let's take 3 collective breaths together. So exhaling first. And inhale. And exhale. Inhale again. And exhale. And one last time. Inhale. And exhale. Whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to me. So that's just a simple practice. You can do it sitting, standing. You tap the back of your body too, and it's just do it 5 minutes, 1 minute, 15 minutes, but hopefully you feel some sort of different sensation. Maybe your body temperature is a little increased, or you feel a little bit of sensation in your hands or body or arms. But it's just something nice and easy to do to awaken the body and bring yourself back into your body with a little bit of gentle breathing.
Thank you. And thank you for all the wisdom and knowledge that you all shared tonight. And yeah, I'm taking home something different too, so thank you. We'll go ahead and do Q&A. Rachel's got the other Rachel has the microphone. Oh, so Sora.
Raise your hand and we'll come to you.
Hi. So I don't feel like I have the best relationship with health. I think because my parents really didn't believe in like American medicine. So I don't have and because I'm first generation American, I think American medicine or medicine that I see here that's like Western medicine is the only valid way of medicine that I've ever really been able to conceive. So I've always wanted to learn more about traditional medicine because to me, I want to practice the idea of kind of just grounding myself in how my ancestors used to live and their knowledge. And for me, thinking that got us thousands and thousands of years to here, so they must have known something, But I feel like because I'm so disconnected from that knowledge, I never know where to find it because a lot of the knowledge that I see, it does seem to come from white people. It does seem to come from a very I get colonizer vibes from it. And so I'm just curious as a panel, and I was so excited that this is going to be a BIPOC-Led discussion on this, which is why I was like, I can't see my DME group, I'm coming through tonight. So I just am curious if I can get, if you have an idea of how someone who's so interested in this topic but not really sure where they can jump into it, especially since I'm Latin American, so I try to be very mindful of where I'm jumping in because I don't want to, I guess I want to be I want to connect to the parts that relate to my culture, but I also want to learn other people's culture too because we all have knowledge to learn and share with each other, but it's hard to do that when I'm not trying to, make the mistakes that I see other people do where they embrace a practice, but they don't, I know yoga is a spiritual practice, but some people divorce it from that, and I don't know, I don't know if I have exactly a question, but if you can get my question with what I said, please share thoughts.
Yeah. So I have some ideas. I understand where you're coming from because, when you look at a lot of our medicine has been co-opted and repackaged and sold by white people. That is a reality. That's the whole entire East Asian medical industry here in the U.S. But hey, at least East Asian medicine is considered real medicine because African medicine isn't. So finding people from the culture who actually practice that medicine can be really, really hard. I agree. I do know fellow Latinx, Goodismos and stuff that I can connect you with here and beyond if you want to connect after. So I know how hard it is to find people. I was deep in the yoga world for a long time, so I have a lot of trauma with white yogis. It's really, I just don't suggest learning any sort of Black or brown cultural medicine from people who aren't from that culture, especially just given what you've shared. I went to last year, got a couple degrees, and when I showed up there, I said, I'm here to return stolen medicine, because this is my medicine, it's in my DNA. You guys have just taken it and we packaged it and made it inaccessible to me, to my community. So now it's only accessible to the people who can afford it, which are mostly, you know, upper middle class white people. So, yeah, like I get what you're saying, and I agree that it's really, really hard. And I also know a lot of people because I only mess with, you know, us. I'll never refer you to a like white person doing like African healing. But there's a lot of them, and if you actually like Google like Black hoodoo like practitioners, the first people who come up are white. So it's a problem. You're correct. And if you Google like Kudinissimo, same thing. But there's a lot of us out there. We all, I mean, Canoe Journey, connect with Channa. That's what they do.
Yeah.
That's literally what they do. I've been to their farm. I've made medicine with them. It's a beautiful space. They're very welcoming for people to come and reconnect.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, my earrings, can't really see them, but I wore them in honor of our organization, and it's actually the eagle and the condor earrings, right? And so it's that prophecy of our peoples, right? Of our South and North American Indigenous peoples coming together for healing, right? For the world. And so that's really big for us. Like we actually do a lot of events where we actually bring Spanish-speaking interpreters and stuff. We'll have elders come that only are fluent in Spanish, and so sometimes they're interpreting English to us. And so, you know, that we have a lot of really mixed folks in our collective. And on the back table, there's actually the one that has a cloth. We have an IHP, so it's the Indigenous Herbalist Pathway. And there's just a QR, it'll lead you right to our website. You can fill out some information, and then that should kind of get you in line with some of our offerings. And we really, really try to do whatever we can to remove whatever barriers people have. So a lot of times, you know, we're like helping folks out with gas money and, you know, travel expenses and stuff so that people can come, because that can be a big barrier too. And so we're just willing to meet folks with open arms wherever they're at, you know. And so, yeah, we would love to have you.
I also understand this because I didn't go into Chinese medicine willingly. I grew up with Korean medicine, with herbs, acupuncture, going with my auntie to get herbs. I was on herbs. But I had such resistance to actually going into this field. And the only reason why I got into it is because I woke up paralyzed one day and I didn't have health insurance at the time. And when you lose your inability to walk, it really shifts your mindset to figure out how you got to this place. And my dad just said, why don't we try acupuncture? And I had never gotten it before. And I went to see this old Korean man, not licensed here, right, in his house. And it, you know, there wasn't like spa, Peruvian flute music. It was just a mat on the floor. And the most intense feeling ever. And I remember walking out of that session, feeling this clarity in my head. And I realized I have been anxious and depressed my whole life. And to this day, I still remember this feeling. And it did something to me. But when I started researching what this field looked like, it turned me off so much because it was so much Orientalism and exotification. And I was also struggling with reckoning with my Asian American identity at the time too, and dealing with my internal racism and bias. And all throughout my education, I struggled with it, having white professors tell me about my culture, you know, and things that I grew up with, and watching in class, oh, that's not how we do it, and I'm getting those things wrong in my exams, and think, you know, that does something to you. You start having this imposter syndrome of who you are. And, you know, I just kept putting it out there. Like, I created space in my life for people to come in. And something that Shelagh said, she said the medicine is in your DNA, and that is so true. You may have this disconnection with your culture, but the blood runs through you. And in Chinese medicine, blood holds so much. Blood is our memory, and everything is passed through the blood. And so I don't speak Korean fluently. There is this disconnection. There is a lot of, you're not fully Korean because you weren't born there. You don't speak the language. You don't look Korean, whatever. But that blood runs through you. And so even if you can't find the right teachers or communities right now, go out in nature, just spend time with the universe, connect with your ancestors, do all this internal work and make that space, and know that you may not have the information up front, but it's still in you. You just have to tap it out, and it's gonna come. And then people will come to you, and you'll start to create that community, and things will start to make sense. It's like you're trying to remember. You already know it, but you've been conditioned to forget. And all you have to do is just add that spark, and you start remembering. And then it's just like, it's over. And then you'll all here for the next session.
Yeah, I gotta add to that, and then we can take another question. But, before I became an herbalist and did that pathway, I was down at Clark College in Vancouver, and we were having these dinners called Indigenous Interwoven, right? And it was that same, the science calls it like epigenetics, right? And so it's this, you can unlock knowledge all on your own, right? It's like that, your own medicine. And so I just wanted to quickly say too, it's like the foods that you ingest can be part of that. So if you're feeling disconnected from your people or from your culture, think about where was it that your people originated with their connection to the land, and like what plants grew there, what foods grew there, and just start there. Sometimes that can just be the simplest but most powerful and profound way is that connection and thinking about your food as your medicine and a way to awaken your ancestral connections.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add, just real quick too, on that, because like you were saying, it's ancestrally in us, and so when you're thinking of your ancestral lands, that's one thing when I take folks out. And Shelagh, to speak on what you said before, just create it. And I created a business that takes folks outside and connects them to the land, but on a holistic mind, body, and spirit healing space. And when I'm out there and I have my Kanaka friends and I have my Latin friends out there, we talk about nettles, and nettles for us are about blood, and it's our superfood. And so one thing I say that you can do is like, what is a superfood? What is your nettles in your lands? And it's funny because you can talk to, the various cultures and they have an answer for it. And so, when you're thinking, like Channa said, when you're thinking about the plants in your ancestral lands, what were your ancestors doing? What were they eating? What were they practicing? And those are ways that you can connect. But just like Dr. Tamsin said, you can go outside and you can connect to yourself and your ancestors in that way. And you also have 4 authentic people up here who are doing the work that you can also, access.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Quiet room.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I wanted to ask in terms of what's happening in the world right now, in terms of the conflict in Palestine, how are y'all holding your communities and holding your hearts in that time?
I'm sorry, I could not understand what you said.
I'm sorry, is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
I was wondering how, with what's happening in Palestine right now, how are y'all holding the immense grief, and in times of such like, I don't know, I know that, like, in the communities that I've been following online and stuff, like, there's just so much pain. What are your practices to kind of, like, still be able to reach out to community and, like, find your way through?
And for me, a big part of that is like prayer, right? I'm out there, you know, when the sun is coming up outside, you know, and I'm praying for those folks, and I'm with them, and I'm shedding some tears and crying out, you know, with and for them, and then as our organization, we've been putting together, a few people have contacted us, and I'm not sure, I wasn't part of the organizing, you know, where the medicines were going, but I definitely helped put together different care packages for people who maybe they had like relatives and stuff, and so we were putting together grief kits and stuff for people, and I do have some like different medicines on the back table. And so we have like some different essences and stuff that are really good at helping to hold the heart. And so, you know, for me, it's just sort of trying to help hold all of our hearts collectively in any way possible, that we can just sort of be tender and open with one another. That's how I approach it.
I know my organization, we hosted events like on solstice and certain times of the year that are particularly important to our community. And so we held those events, and as Indigenous people looking at this genocide of this other, you know, group, we have provided platforms to allow Palestinians that are here or are related to other folks in the country to come and to be able to speak and take that time to educate us and tell us what's going on over there. I mean, beyond what we have been seeing. So we've tried to bring awareness, you know, through our organizations. I know we also organized with another Native team that did a paddle out to Commencement Bay to bring attention to what's going on. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do as you know, a group who is, you know, very familiar with you know, genocide and being able to see genocide taking place in real time, you know, being able to provide, you know, whether it's platforms or medicines or space for those folks to come and to be able to talk and to share and to educate us, and also tell us how can we be of better help. So I know those are some of the things that, you know, that we've done.
For me, I work at a university, and we've been facilitating meditation groups for people to come in, and we meditate together, and we have these open conversations and these small group connections. But a lot of my own work in my business, the foundation of everything that I do, even when I'm talking about spirituality, metaphysics, it always comes down to social justice, right? And so I can talk about astrology in terms of social justice context. It's not separate from each other. And coming and being Korean, Korea is still divided. We're under American imperialism. And so speaking with Asian and Korean communities, we have to understand that, like, what's going on there has happened in our side of the world as well, and it's all interconnected. And in terms of metaphysics, there is this massive shift that's happening in 2024 when we enter the Lunar New Year. And it's a 20-year shift that's happening, that the macrocosmic chi comes into our culture and it shifts the way that we think about everything. And so what we're seeing now is not something new, but the reaction to it is very new. And it's the shift that's happening. And that 20-year shift is represented by a trigram called Lee. And Lee represents this bright, young sun. It's like this brightness that comes into us. So that's the chi, that's the energy that we're going to be experiencing in the next 20 years of our life. And so what I see, and this, I guess this what keeps me hopeful, is that people speaking out about this now, finally, is this shift that's happening. And that Lee trigram represents the mature older woman. So to me, it's like your auntie coming in. So auntie's coming in, and if you know any aunties, they don't hold back. And that's the vibe, that's the chi that's coming in. So whatever that means, you know, and I see this like in so many different industries and fields and professions, that there is this thing brewing and bubbling. And so when I work with clients or when I'm teaching metaphysics, I weave that in, that you cannot separate spirituality from these bigger issues that are all interconnected. And you have to think about, how does this impact you? What are you doing to be, because you know the shift is coming whether you believe it or not. So how are you going to change your perspective? How are you going to contribute to society so that you're more aligned with what's going on?
Thank you for asking this question. I appreciate you bringing Palestine into the room. It's really important, I think, that we always talk about it. Genocide of Black and brown people, colonial genocide specifically, you know, funded by imperial Western governments is not new. It's always happening. What is new about right now, and it's not new in Palestine either, it's been happening for 75 years. But what is new is the literal genocide being live streamed directly to all of our devices and us witnessing the killing of children and women and disabled people and just everyone. I'm not gonna lie, that has impacted me for the last couple months, as I'm sure it has all of us. It's a really hard thing to watch. And I do not feel that I can look away. I have to witness as a person that, regardless of my own marginalizations, living under, you know, colonial American rule, I have a lot of privilege because I'm sitting here safe right now. And I don't really have to worry about my safety. I know I'm gonna go home to my dog tonight and be safe. You know, I've also been involved with like organizing around Palestinian liberation for the last 15 years since I became aware of what was happening there. I grew up as this one Jewish woman put, an accidental Zionist, because I grew up around a lot of Jewish people in the city I grew up in. And I had to unlearn everything that I learned about Israel. And I'm very grateful to a friend of mine who is Palestinian who like really began that journey for me. And I think just, you know, like Tamsin was saying, as someone who has like been activated around that movement for 15 years, it's always been very fringe. It's always been just Palestinian people and like a few other people, whereas now there are a lot more people who see the realities of not just what's happening now, but are learning that history of, you know, the fact that Israel was just placed upon Palestine 75 years ago. And I don't know, you know, how familiar you all were with that history, but, you know, Israel is a British mandate, right? White people decided, okay, you know, we feel bad about the Holocaust, so we're gonna create a Jewish state. But Palestine wasn't actually the only place that was considered. There were multiple places throughout the world, including a couple places in Africa and including Argentina. So I think when people understand that, it's like this, whoa, wait a second. And then you can begin to unpack and learn more of that history and see what is happening there. I also have some indigenous friends who like went to Palestine and did a whole project and write-up about like how what is happening in Palestine for the last 75 years is exactly what happened and has been happening here to them for the last 400 years. So, of course, centering Palestinian voices and experiences is really, really important. Listening to our Palestinian friends and comrades, creating spaces where they're able to share what they know and also like get resources and healing. We also hosted a couple of teach-ins at Creative Justice. We also did like the big cultural healing events every month for the village, and our last one of the year, we organized with some local Palestinian organizations and allowed them to take the lead, and it was really one of the most beautiful gatherings I've ever seen. It was really, really cool to see like so much of the Palestinian community come out, and all the food and the dancing and cross-cultural connection, in addition to education. So I think like creating more spaces like that, which we're all doing, is really, really, really important. I mean, there's no justice for any of us while any of us are, being genocided upon. And, Black people and Palestinian people have a long history of solidarity. So that is just something that, to me, is integral to Black liberation, is Palestinian liberation. So yeah, again, thank you for asking that question.
Thank you. I know we're coming down to the end of the night, but I think we have room for one more question. And if there's no questions, then Rachel gets to talk again.
I'll walk slowly so you get a chance to decide if you prefer the last question. Okay, seeing none. Well, it's my job to thank everyone on this panel for everything you shared tonight, all the wisdom that has been held, and to thank you for being here and for your amazing questions to help solicit even more wisdom. A big round of applause for everyone.